Doubts about President Biden's ability to do his job. That's also a concern for his backup, Kamala Harris, for different reasons, of course. And now it's coming out fully from Democrats publicly. The liberal media's strong defense of that 2024 presidential ticket may be weakening. I'm Harris Faulkner. You are in the Faulkner Focus. Washington Post columnist David Ignatius got the ball rolling with this headline: President Biden should not run again in 2024. Now a New York Times piece calling the 2024 race a field of nightmares. Plus, an op-ed in the New York Magazine titled "The Case for Biden to Drop Kamala Harris," even from this former House Speaker, Nancy Pelosi.
Is Vice President Kamala Harris the best running mate for this president?
He thinks so, and that's what matters.
Do you think she is the best running mate, though?
She's the Vice President of the United States. So when people say to me, well, why isn't she doing this or that? I said, because she's the Vice President. That's the job description. You don't do that much.
Wow, that didn't sound like full-throated support. What was that? Took him several times just to get her to answer the question. Former White House Deputy Chief of Staff Karl Rove with this plain truth.
Time is not his friend. He's going to turn 81 later this year. He'll be nearly 82 by the time of the 2024 election. People are not going to wake up and say, you know what, he's showing a lot more pep. He's being a lot more focused, a lot more disciplined, a lot sharper. Boy, I feel much better about it than I did 6 months ago.
Mark Meredith live for us at the White House. Mark.
Harris, good morning to you. It's easy to see there is growing angst among some Democrats about a Biden-Harris ticket in 2024. And now you've got a lot of people asking whether or not somebody could or should challenge President Biden for the nomination. Quinnipiac recently did a poll asking some of those Democratic or Biden supporters how they feel, and 51% say they could change their candidate's choice if somebody else jumps in. But one person who says they've got their mind already made up, they're on the Biden-Harris train, is former DNC nominee Hillary Clinton. And she says it's okay for people to question the president's age, but she's got her mind made up.
The question's legitimate, but the conclusion that people draw is, I think, off base. Look, I am supporting President Biden and Vice President Harris because of what they've got. When people say to me, well, he's old, yeah, that's right. But look at what he's gotten done.
As of right now, the president's most notable challenger is Robert F. Kennedy Jr. The environmental lawyer, though, says it's not really a fair fight. He says that the DNC has rigged it against him because, remember, they changed the primary calendar. They moved South Carolina to the forefront, and they also right now have not scheduled any debates. And there are no indications that the DNC plans to make things easier for anyone else to jump into the race. Vice President Kamala Harris, though, she's been asked a lot recently about the president's age, whether or not he's able to handle another 4 years. This is what she had to say to CBS last week.
Are you prepared to be commander-in-chief?
Yes, I am, if necessary. But Joe Biden is going to be fine. And let me tell you something. I work with Joe Biden every day.
So we are hearing that support from the vice president, but we've also seen in the polls that President Biden is essentially tied in a hypothetical matchup with his predecessor, former President Trump, and that's amid all of the ongoing trials and situations that the former president continues to face. But Harris, there is another X factor out there. There are still rumblings that there could be a third party, like that could jump in there, like the No Labels group, that may decide to nominate somebody next year. So while the race may look settled down, anything can happen, Harris.
Well, absolutely. We haven't gone forth yet even to the primary season, but those numbers are stubborn. And for Biden, they've been low like that since the day after the debauched and deadly for Americans and Afghan help. All those people who helped us for 20 years of war. The day after that, Biden's numbers tumbled, and they have never come back after that exit from Afghanistan. Mark, good to see you. Thank you. Cassie Smedley now, former RNC Deputy Communications Director. David Carlucci, former Democratic State Senator for New York. So, Cassie, I'm going to start with you. I mentioned Afghanistan, and then you've got the stubborn inflation, the tapping of the oil reserves over and over to historic points now. Our energy prices climbing precipitously.
Yeah, good morning, Harris. Whether it's his age, his competency level, or his policies, you've got nearly 3 in 4 Americans who say Joe Biden should not serve another 4 years in the White House. And this is a topic that you've brought up a lot, we've talked about a lot, the American people are talking about a lot. And what are Democrats doing about it other than talking about it? Nothing. Mark my words, he will be on the ballot in 2024. And that is despite the will of the American people. That is despite what the people who are around him and the Democrat establishment know to be true about him. And they're going to push him through because they're too beholden to their own power and their own special interests than the will of the American people. And the American voters need to punish the Democrat Party for doing that.
All right. You know, I do want to go to you, David. I want to preface this by this, and I've been saying this for weeks now. This is less about age, probably almost zero about, because we all know some octogenarians who can rock it. This is about his ability now, and it has been on full display in the last 96 hours, and it is less and less impressive every time.
You're right. It should be about his ability, and that's why he's going to be the Democratic nominee. That's why he's going to be reelected, because of what he's done. And you're right. Look, if Trump actually wins, he'll be the oldest president ever when he leaves office, if that is the case. So the age is a ridiculous argument. Of course, you can poll a generic candidate, but you can't vote for a generic candidate. So every time we look at these polls and people say, well, there should be someone else. Yeah,
actually,
we always
though,
want to do better.
That's only true for your side of the aisle, because when you poll Biden and or Kamala against the GOP group that are on the next debate stage, Biden loses to every single one of them. And to Nikki Haley outside the margin of error.
No, but when we look at,
I mean, it's not the Republicans' fault that you don't have anybody else to put up. Let me move on.
The Republicans' leading candidate by a wide margin is Donald Trump, who over 50% of Americans said they will never vote for, no matter who's running against him. So all of these tactics that are being used against Biden will come right back to hit the Republican candidate. So I think it's a very dangerous slope to go down.
And Cassie, you just said that more people don't want Biden. Isn't that what you just said?
Yes.
All right.
Yeah, more people don't want Biden. And I think Donald Trump is happy to run on his policies and what he did for his 4 years in office against Joe Biden any day of the week.
Yeah, I know people are awfully thirsty for those gas prices back and that low inflation at 1.4 to 1.7. Yes. All right, let's move forward. The White House wasting no time in telling the media just how to cover the Biden impeachment inquiry. The counsel's office wrote a letter to news executives. Here's a quote from it. It's time for the media to ramp up its scrutiny of House Republicans for opening an impeachment inquiry based on lies, end quote. The press secretary facing a full court press, of course.
Baseless inquiry that the House Republicans can't even really defend themselves. Incredibly inappropriate, ridiculous attacks. I'm going to leave that to the White House counsel from my colleague who sent that memo. Just laid out really kind of specifically as to how we see this process has moved forward, how there is no evidence.
More than half of voters told CNN they believe the president was involved and he lied. You can't have a response to that, Kareem?
Oh, critics were ready. Miranda Devine writes, the media's covert protection of the scandal-plagued Bidens comes to light, yet they still push innocence. Jonathan Turley, legal guru, calls the White House letter marching orders. He writes, what's most disturbing is that the White House shows no concern in making such an open pitch. The fact that this comes from the White House counsel's office is particularly chilling. This is not the press office, but the counsel for the president calling on media to form a unified front against the Republicans and the impeachment inquiry. Well, that's exactly the point. That's exactly what jumps out at you. You mean you have attorneys trying to shut down the media? Cassie.
No one's shutting down the media. No one's shutting. They're giving context to this crazy situation. You have McCarthy, who first said he would go forward if he got the entire House to go along with it. Now he realizes that's not possible.
I called on Cassie's name, so as soon as you're done, we'll go back to her.
What I was getting at is that the White House is not demanding. They're giving some clarification to this crazy situation.
You know what? That's child's play right there. You get a letter from an attorney from the White House counsel, and you don't think it's serious? You must be the only one on the planet who would show that to every friend and another attorney that you have.
But it's outlining the reality.
Take it away. That's the stuff you hear about. That's the stuff you hear about in countries run by dictatorships, not where we have a free press. And let me tell you, Harris, I've worked in communications in Washington, D.C. for almost 15 years, including 10 of them on Capitol Hill. We always joke the easiest job in Washington is a Democrat press staffer because they expect that the coverage will be positive, and I've had reporters admit that to me as well. So they don't need to put out these letters in writing. In fact, you just expect that they're all friends behind the scenes. But the fact that they are, and as Jonathan Turley pointed out, from the counsel's office, not even the press office, that is incredibly concerning. Every reporter should be stubbornly asking these questions of this administration.
Is baseless.
And the administration should be happy to answer them.
And they want to point that out. They want to point that out, that this is just a show. They've already done investigations. They have thousands of pages of documents. And if they were unbiased and serious about this, they'd have the same questions for Trump and his family.
Look, I do want to point out that what the Republicans have done that is so different and so much more professional and expected of them is something Nancy Pelosi never did. She never went through all of the levels to get through impeachment inquiry. She went straight to a vote on impeachment against Trump.
Because she had all the evidence.
So, wow.
Yeah.
Look at that.
We don't have
you
evidence
seen
here.
the trove against Biden? But look, we don't have time for this
these
right
are all
now. Most
accusations.
importantly,
Nothing
the
has
White
been
House
proven.
doesn't have confidence in the liberal media, so the White House counsel begs them in a letter to take the order
There's no
to back
begging,
the president.
There's clarity here. They want it to be clear.
Clarity
If you
from
just say
the legal department.
Republicans say
Good to
this,
see you both.
Democrats
Thank
say
you.
that. That's one thing.
Thanks,
but they
Harris.
want to be clear. Look, there's been investigations.
David, we're leaving.
There's been documents
Thank you.
filed.
New data dinging Bidenomics, an alarming spike of Americans in poverty levels and crushed under credit card debt, all coming under President Biden's watch. Plus, more fallout over what Republicans are calling a hostage ransom deal with Iran.
You should be outraged because what they're doing is they're placing a bounty on every American's head. Sadly, this Biden White House puts partisan politics above our national security interests.
The contortions that the White House is going through to defend giving $6 billion to a state sponsor of terror. Senator Josh Hawley of the great state of Missouri in Focus Next.
I want to bring these Americans home more than anybody. But it seems like, the last trade we had with Brittany Griner, who was caught smoking a vape pipe, we sent the merchant of death, Russian arms dealer, in exchange. Now, this time, $6 billion. This is probably one of the worst foreign policy moves I've seen that is arming the Islamic Republic of Iran with $6 billion. It's going to have major implications. And I think you're going to see that it was a major mistake.
That's House Foreign Affairs Chairman Michael McCaul questioning and criticizing the Biden White House over that controversial deal to clear $6 billion in seized Iranian money to free American prisoners. The announcement came on Monday, September 11th. Imagine that, the timing. Critics call it a ransom payment. The White House says, there's nothing wrong here.
This is not a payment of any kind. It's not ransom. These aren't U.S. taxpayer dollars. And we haven't lifted a single one of our sanctions on Iran. Iran will be getting no sanctions relief. It is Iranian money. That's point number one. Point number two, it's not a blank check. They don't get to spend it any way they want. It's not $6 billion all at once. They will have to make a request for withdrawals for humanitarian purposes only.
The Washington Examiner editorial calling it Biden's 9/11 bonanza for Iran, adding it is astonishing but also characteristic that the administration thought that the anniversary of the worst terror attacks against America was the right time to shake hands on agreement with the world's leading, longest-lasting, and most intractable sponsor of terrorism. Republican Senator Josh Hawley of Missouri, member of the Senate Judiciary and Homeland Security Committees, is in focus now. Great to see you, Senator.
Thank you.
First of all, why do you think it happened this way?
Well, I think because the Biden administration is absolutely desperate to appease Iran. I mean, that's the only thing we can conclude, Harris. I mean, we should get clear on this. A lot of the same people who are running the Biden foreign policy also ran Obama's foreign policy, and they want a deal with Iran. They're willing to do just about anything, and here we have them giving away prisoners, giving them $6 billion. I mean, come on.
So, but why are they so desperate to do a deal with Iran? I have to think that when you're that desperate and you give away everything, and look, we all want our Americans home, no matter where they are in the globe. But when you do this deal with literally the devil, there's got to be something else in it that maybe we don't know. What is it?
Well, I just think it's a desperation to appease this nation, to get back into some kind of a nuclear agreement with them, just like the Obama administration did. I think it's religion to them, Harris. I think that the Obama team thought that their terrible deal with Iran was the best thing ever. Joe Biden desperately wants to resurrect it, get back into it, and they're willing to do everything they can to try to entice Iran. And if that means giving them $6 billion, if that means giving them prisoners, they're here for it. Meanwhile, it's making us less safe. It's making the region less stable. It's a bad deal.
Real quickly, just to follow up, because what McCall was just saying previously is that, you know, they're going to be kind of, I guess, gates along the way. Not McCall, Kirby, Admiral McKirby, or Kirby rather, for the White House. They're going to be gates along the way. So if they don't do this, really, can we call that money back? I mean, what does that even mean? Will they have to jump through hoops to get each, you know, I guess, part of the money? Is that, how does that work? Should we believe that?
No, it's a total joke. What he's basically saying is Iran is going to have to go through a lot. They're going to have to go to the bank and get the money. They're going to actually have to go to the trouble of withdrawing it. Yeah. It's also not true that this isn't sanctions relief. We are unfreezing funds. As part of our sanctions regime, we had this money frozen. Now we're giving it to them. So they are getting relief. They are getting a sweet deal here from Joe Biden. It's pathetic.
Wow. It sounds like if you take Americans, maybe you can have all your cash forgiven. I mean, I don't know what other message the world takes. All right, we'll move to this. Later today, President Biden is expected to deliver what is billed as a major economic address after inflation started ticking back up. Last month, it did it again. We were at 3.2 as it rose from 3. Now we're at 3.7 in August. Gas prices increased nearly 11% from last month. The cost of air travel, car insurance, hotels, utility bills also spiking. Food never went down. So that's always high right now. New census data show the median household income last year fell to $74,000. The U.S. poverty level saw its largest one-year jump ever between 2021 and 22. And the child poverty in this country more than doubled during that time period. The president's chief economic advisor is blaming Republicans. Let's watch.
Your child poverty rate is a policy decision. This president decides to have the lowest child poverty rate in history. That was his decision, and others, including 250 or something like that members of the House and 50 Republicans and 50 Republicans in the Senate, have made a very different decision to facilitate a more than doubling of child poverty by allowing the child tax credit that was doing so much of the lifting to achieve that historically low poverty rate, to allow that to expire.
The New York Post with this blaring headline, "It's still the economy stupid." The nationwide credit card debt now tops $1 trillion for the first time. The average per household, $10,000 is the debt that they hold. Senator Hawley, you just filed a bill that would help with those staggering interest rates, so at least knock down part of the problems.
That's right. What my bill would do is cap credit card interest rates, Harris, at 18%. No more than that. No hidden fees, no backdoor fees, 18%. We should give the working people of this country who Joe Biden is putting the screws to, we should give them relief. More and more people have to put on their credit card their monthly rent payments. They got to put food on the credit card because of inflation. And now if they do that, the average interest rate, Harris, is up around 30% on these credit cards. That is outrageous. We ought to give working people real relief.
Well, and Senator, what I've been pointing out, when you put food and gas and those staples on your card, you're basically paying twice for them because of the interest that will be laid. You won't even get much use out of them because you're going to eat immediately. So this isn't something like a car that you take a loan out on and you get to drive it for several years. We're talking about the things that they used to be able to afford right then and there and not have to go into debt over. Look, real quickly, talk to me about what Republicans have done to get Democrats to constantly say that you voted against a bill, predominantly, I would say in the House, I would imagine, against a bill that would have relieved the poverty. What is to that argument?
There's nothing to it that I know of. I mean, here's what the actual policy choices have been by this administration. It has been to make China richer and to make the United States poorer. What Joe Biden has done consistently is send jobs to China, shut down our energy production, give that to China, make us buy solar panels from China, make us buy batteries from China. So now we can't have any energy in this country. We got to buy Chinese energy, other energy. We can't have energy jobs in this country. We've got to pay more for all that stuff. They're getting rich. Our workers are getting screwed. We've got to do something about it. He's the problem. And that's why we've got to go in a different direction here.
Senator Hawley, thank you so much for being in focus.
Thank you.
Border Patrol is struggling to keep up with the crush of illegal immigrants in custody. A new internal email appears to show the agency is just letting illegals go to manage the numbers. Just put them out there, and then we'll kind of, say how many are out there at a later date. Florida Attorney General Ashley Moody, who obtained that email, is in focus next. Plus, New Jersey parents are fighting back on the state's school gender policies.
Let the parents decide. No one loves our children, knows our children, or can care for our children more than the mother and father. You and I know that as fathers, and we shouldn't have any governor getting in the middle of it.
For the second time, a federal judge has ruled former President Obama's DACA program illegal. The Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals program shields hundreds of thousands of young illegal immigrants from deportation, and those children are known as dreamers. DACA will actually not end immediately, however. It will stop accepting new applicants. Again, this was Obama's plan. It's possible the U.S. Supreme Court would have to decide once again. Biden's failed border policies on full display at a hearing yesterday, a former U.S. special agent with this.
The government has lost track of 85,000 minors that crossed the border unaccompanied. These children are prime targets for traffickers for sex or labor. Tragically, as a result of this administration's current policies, DHS and HHS have unwittingly become a child trafficking delivery service. This must stop.
Let's take a look. Tucson, Arizona has shaped up to be the new epicenter of the crisis. Illegal crossings have hit 2,000 per day at that border sector, far too many to process. Bill Malusian is now here with more. So, Bill, they're hitting an area that hasn't been hit in a while, and those numbers are huge for Arizona.
Yeah, Harris, they absolutely are. Border Patrol's Tucson sector is getting absolutely inundated, and these people are coming in from literally all over the world. I want to show you some video we just got in from our cameraman on the ground in that Tucson sector. Take a look at this. This is Lukeville, Arizona. Just about an hour ago, a large group of men from Africa just crossed over illegally into Lukeville. And as you look at this video, you'll notice there are no women, there are no children. These are all young guys who have literally come from half a world away to cross illegally and turn themselves into Border Patrol, apparently with little to no fear of deportation. This Lukeville area has been getting a lot of men from Senegal in recent days, and they're getting groups like this multiple times a day, every day, and Border Patrol is overwhelmed. Here's what's happening as a result. Take a look at these images out of Ajo, Arizona yesterday, also Tucson sector. These are Border Patrol outdoor holding areas for migrants. Their CBP facilities in the sector are overwhelmed and over capacity right now with so many illegal crossings. Street releases have started. They're running out of places to put these migrants. So you can see some of them are being held outdoors in the Arizona heat in these temporary holding areas that Border Patrol has set up, as they just cannot keep up with the numbers that are coming across the border right now. And it's happening all across the southern border. Take a look at these images. Eagle Pass, Texas, our drone team out there as we continue to witness illegal crossings brazenly in the middle of the day, broad daylight, people just walking through the river into the United States pretty much without any resistance whatsoever. And unfortunately, yesterday in this Eagle Pass area, a 10-year-old girl did drown in that river as she was trying to cross over with her mom. Lastly, you take a look at this video. That's a group that just crossed through the barbed wire right in front of the Texas National Guard. They go running off into the brush, and then they take off running into Eagle Pass, and they disappear out of view of our drone. We never saw them apprehended, so those are now considered gotaways. And Harris, back out here live since President Biden first took office, CBP sources tell us there are now more than 1.5 million known gotaways at our southern border. That's 1.5 million people. We don't know where they are, We don't know why they came into this country.
Yeah, it was a year ago this week that I was down there with you, and those numbers were more than half of that. So look how much has happened since then. Just real quickly, why from Africa suddenly?
We have no idea. It's a great question, and we're trying to figure out how they're even getting to the border in that location, because you have to think about it. They're going to have to take flights. They're going to have to take flights somewhere into South America and probably go through the Darien Gap in Panama, Colombia, then make their way up through Mexico. It's a long journey, and the point is people aren't going to come from halfway around the world and give themselves up to Border Patrol if they think they're going to be deported, right? So these people are expecting to be released, and that's why these numbers are so big.
All right. Bill, thank you very much. Well, you're hearing about the recent surge of illegal immigrants, and you heard those numbers that Bill gave from Border Patrol just about the gotaways. 1.5 million now. People in this country have no idea how long they've been here, who they are, so on and so forth. So now the Border Patrol is saying it has to make some drastic decisions. They are setting so-called book-out targets to help keep the numbers of those in custody manageable. That includes simply releasing some of those illegals into America. The information comes from an email that was obtained by Florida's Attorney General Ashley Moody. Her state is suing the Biden administration for releasing illegal immigrants into the U.S., particularly based on that book-out program, because we know it's not public. The email sent by Border Patrol leadership to sector chiefs reads this way in part: the rate of daily encounters continues to surpass the daily permanent bookouts, and the in-custody numbers continue to rise, creating significant risks to agents and detainees. Florida Attorney General Ashley Moody in Focus Now. First of all, tell me about coming across that email and what jumped out at you most.
Well, as you know, through our litigation and Florida's efforts, we have uncovered their secret plans. And I use that term, and I can't believe I'm saying that. It sounds like something a child would say, but this is what they're doing. They are orchestrating an extraordinary influx of migrants into our country like we have never seen. And using the term book-out targets, let's say what that really is. It's mass release quotas. This Border Patrol cannot release enough people into the interior fast enough for this administration. And so they're giving them quotas. And why are they giving them quotas? Because Biden came in, he took a wrecking ball to the border, opened it up, and when you see from Volusia, when you see those folks coming across in record numbers, they're not afraid at all, they're walking up to agents, it's because they know the majority are being released. That's by design, and now we're seeing their plans to make sure they're releasing as many as possible into the United States.
Look, I don't know if you caught it. I was asking Bill about just the new wave now from places like West Africa, Senegal, from the African continent. They have no idea, per our reporting, why that's happening now. But I am curious the timing of all of this, because now it's attracting new continents, new countries of people now to come here, because, as you say, they know they won't be turned away. They're here to stay. So the Customs and Border Protection, we reached out to them this morning, and they gave this statement on the email to the Faulkner Focus just this past hour. And here it is, Attorney General. Border Patrol has merely directed sectors to process individuals faster into the range of immigration pathways available in order to address increasing numbers of individuals in custody. These bookouts include processing record numbers of migrants into expedited removal and conducting record numbers of removal flights. Your reaction?
The numbers that they want to increase are those that they are going to process for release into the interior. No other president in the history of our country has engineered these numbers that Biden has done. And I just want to put this in perspective for you. From our litigation, we saw when they first opened the gates, they weren't even giving them a notice to appear. Like, see you later, never come back. Now they're giving them a piece of paper with a notice to appear that is a decade plus out. Right. So it's in effect not any date to return. And look at where they're speeding up this processing and release. And they're doing street releases. That means right into these states, no education, no housing, no food, no nothing in support of these. They're just releasing them into Arizona and California. So do you think that those governors, Hobbs and Newsom, are going to do what the Massachusetts governor's done and declare a crisis and an emergency and demand that Biden do something, we'll see when these numbers start being released. And if you extrapolate out what they're projecting for September, the numbers through the Biden administration through his first term, he will have encountered and released the majority of more immigrants that would surpass the population in all but only 6 of our states.
Wow.
I just want to put that in perspective for your viewers. This is an inflection point in our nation's history of which we may never recover.
Attorney General, thank you. From Florida, appreciate you, Attorney General Moody. That's a lot of information. Glad you're on it. Crime in New York City is spiraling out of control. An 8-year-old little boy got off his school bus and was caught in the crossfire of a gunfight. What one day district attorney says is the biggest problem in this dim-led state that leaves him feeling helpless. Plus, Aaron Rodgers, star quarterback in his own words, for the first time publicly, about his season-ending injury. Tyrus in Focus next. There he is.